This is episode 40 with Daniel Packard.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 40 today, and I'm really excited to be speaking to Daniel Packard. Now, in case you haven't heard of him, Daniel is a former mechanical engineer and stand-up comedian turned author, speaker, coach, and expert on love. But growing up, Daniel was a bit of a love amateur himself. No matter what he did or how hard he tried, his love life was always pretty average. After years of pain and frustration, Daniel realized that the source of his disappointment was actually a lack of self-love. But while people often speak about self-love, no one was really speaking about how to build it. After 10 years of research and experimentation, Daniel has built a very precise and clear model of the mechanics of self-love. This science of self-love gives people a clear and practical understanding of how self-love works, how self-love affects our lives, and how to build it on a daily basis. His book, Enough is Enough, and his online course, Next Level Love, creates a system and tools where love athletes, as Daniel calls them, can use their lives as an experiential gym to train themselves using daily work-ins that build up the strong inner muscles which allow us to love ourselves and others at the highest level possible. Now, in this episode, you're going to learn how to start attracting more love into your life. What does self-love actually mean and how do we develop it? The difference between self-love and self-indulgence. How to know if you really love someone, and this is a biggie. When you don't need to add more love in your life, and the real reason you're lacking love. As always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in the show notes at briantier.com/040. But for now, let's go hang out with Daniel. Welcome back, everyone, and a big welcome to today's guest. I'm speaking to Daniel Packard. Daniel, welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and make sure that people don't have a quarter life crisis.
I appreciate that. Well, we connected via one of your sort of assistants, and most of the time I sort of look around and reach out to guests to cover topics that I think my audience need to and would want to hear or learn more about. But in this case, it was really pleasant. And Christian reached out to me and said that he thinks you would be a great interview. And I had a look at some of your talks and some of the work you're doing. And it's a topic that I really have been wanting to cover a lot, and one I'm sure that I will cover in future more, which we'll get to in the meat of this interview. But before we get into that, I just want to find out, a little bit about who is Daniel Packard and a bit about your quarter life story.
Oh, who's Daniel Packard? Well, the short answer, wow, there's so many things that bubbled up. I went blank. That never happens. When I was in my early 20s, I was catatonically I wanted love and connection like many people do. And I was so afraid. I was just so afraid. And I wanted someone so badly. And I remember I saw all these guys that, in my opinion, did not have as much, for lack of a better word, things to offer as I did. I knew I had good things to offer. I was funny. I dressed okay, height, weight, proportionate. I'm Jewish, chosen people. That has to count for something. I kind of knew, I was bringing something to the table. But I'd look across and it was the guy with the Who Farted t-shirt and he's got the girl. And I looked at my friend and I said, what is this? Like, what is it? How do they connect? How do they hook up? And he said, well, they're drunk when they do it. And I went, oh. He said, yeah, the first kiss, they're drunk. And I thought, huh. I said, but that's cheating. And also, if you want to know if the person likes you or loves you, you don't numb the part of their brain that makes decisions. That's like cheating. It's cheating. And he said, well, I know. That's why you're different. You want to do it the right way. You don't want to cheat. And it was a silly moment, but it taught me, like, I want to do love right. I want to take the time to look at it and say, let's slow down and look at what's going on here, because I don't want to cheat. And because I haven't cheated, because I don't skip steps, because I don't look for, the magical third alternative, I now experience love, I believe, at a much higher level than people, because I got to the fear of things. I just said, look, fear is the issue. I don't want to be afraid. How does one not be afraid? And it was not an easy journey, but I went on that journey. And like a scientist, I figured out really how not to be afraid. And when you take away fear, love is magnificent. It's easy. You attract naturally what you want. You get rid of that which you don't like. All the things that people complain about with love almost magically evaporate when you're not ruled by fear. So if on my tombstone, I hope it says that Daniel Packard lived a fearless life. How's that?
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like love was a big thing that you kind of wrestled with in your 20s. And if people if people hadn't clicked by now, this conversation is going to be focused on love and how we sort of develop more love in our own lives. And something that I saw from some of your work when I was doing some research, and I'm curious to find out, you said that you wanted to learn how things really worked and not cheat or take shortcuts, or just get a woman drunk and get a phone number or whatever it may be. But I'm curious to find out how that journey unfolded then for you on that path that you took of searching. And something that I was going to point out when I was doing some research is that you said that the journey to love starts with developing ourselves first. Is that how you went on this journey?
Well, that's the journey I went on, because I think that's the journey everybody goes on if they're paying attention, and they have courage. I sort of got a taste that was what the path was, and that was the biggest kind of breakthrough for me. As I was 18 and just, again, so afraid of girls. And I just so wanted a girlfriend. I really, ever since I was 13, there was this girl, Jenny from the block, and she had this cute button nose and curly hair, and she was really fast, which made, at 13, was really cool. She was good at capture the flag, and she had these little white shorts that I just wanted to cuddle with that. I don't know what it was. And I was so afraid. And then, what?
It's something about the little white shorts.
Yeah, right? Yeah, little white shorts, and I had a Lamborghini Countach poster. I don't know if that paints a picture of how old I am. Anyway, and then, as if life wasn't scary enough, God just decides to give me pimples at like 14, which was just such a horrible trick, the pimples. I don't know. God has when I meet him, I'm going to be like, come on, what's the thing with pimples? We're already going through adolescence. Our body becomes hijacked by hormones, and like overnight, we're just taken over. And then, boys have to pursue girls when we're at the most insecure. And then God thinks, no, that's not hard enough. Let's put visible infections on their face. Like, what is that?
How do you like me now?
Not necessary. So anyway, I had pimples, and they weren't that bad, but they felt like I was too ugly to be loved. That's how it felt. I was just hideous, and nobody would love me. And that's how it felt. And so that added to the fear. And I was like, okay, I'll die alone with cats and a pimply face. I got it. Thank you. And then I get to college, and I see this kid, Darren, this like stringy-haired skater, and he had pimples. And I thought, okay, he's like me. He's going to die alone with cats, and he's got pimples. But unlike me, Derek wasn't afraid. Derek was sort of fearless. He was comfortable in his own skin. He didn't adjust who he was. He didn't seem afraid. And then 2 weeks later into college, I see Derek holding hands with, in my opinion, the coolest, cutest, funniest girl in school, this girl named Pippa. And they're holding hands. And I'm like, what? Like 2 weeks in? How does this? And I went up to Darren, and I was like, Darren, how did you do this? Like, to me, it was just he was from the future. I didn't get it. And he said, well, I just know that I'm a 10 out of 10.
Wow.
And I was really confused by this. I mean, who thinks that, let alone someone with pimples? I mean, pimples equals no. And I said, Darren, oh, I get it, Darren, you fake confidence. Women like confidence, and that's how you get the girl. And he looked at me very perplexed. He says, I don't fake it. He said, I just know it. And the way he said, I know it, just mesmerized me, because I could feel it. This wasn't a slogan. It wasn't a concept. This was his default state. And I said, Darren, like, where did you learn you're a 10 out of 10? Like, where'd you get this trick? What are you, like a Harry Potter fan? Like, is there a spell? And he said, I said, where'd you learn this? And he said, where did you learn you weren't a 10 out of 10?
And this guy's a guru.
He was a straight, pimply Jedi sent to wake me up. And when he said it, where did you learn you weren't a 10 out of 10? The whole matrix realigned. It took me years to fully become and find my inner Darren, but here's what I learned in that one brief interaction. Okay? When you know you're a 10 out of 10, you're fearless. You don't have fear. So that was huge. B, when you know you're a 10 out of 10, even if you have pimples or whatever thing you think is a problem, you don't care about. That was huge. And then if you know you're a 10 out of 10, you get your dream person fast. And finally, if I learned I wasn't a 10 out of 10, then it means I could unlearn it. Meaning this was flexible, meaning this was not my fate. It was just a state I was in. And in that one brief interaction, I got the whole game. And then it took time to become that. Darren was just born like the Dalai Lama, like that. I had to go on a journey. And that's what I try to help people with is, most people know, hey, if you loved yourself more, love would be better. People get the catchphrases. You hear if you love someone, if you love yourself, that's when you can love someone. People already know this. Darren didn't come up with this. I didn't come up with this. But people aren't doing it. And so for me, being the scientist that I was, because my dad was a physicist and I was a mechanical engineer, I didn't want it to be a catchphrase. I wanted to truly get there. And so instead of just saying, oh, Darren inspires me, I went on this journey to actually, like a scientist, understand how does one become such that your 10 out of 10 is your base state. It's just who you are. And I'll tell you, it was a scary journey. It really was. And I had no coach. Now people have me, and I'm kind of jealous because they get breakthroughs in like 3 weeks. It took me 3 years to get. But whatever. The point is it is an intense journey. It's a beautiful journey. And now I'm able to share people a set of tools and a system on how to actually mechanically build that 10 out of 10 state within other people.
Yeah, and I can totally relate. I went through sort of a couple of years where I was single, and people used to say, like my friends and other girls used to say to me, like, why are you single? You've got so much to offer. And it was only when I started becoming way more confident in who I was that now I've got an amazing girlfriend. And it was kind of like when I stopped thinking about it and getting in my head about it, that everything kind of started happening. So would you then define self-love, like we hear about this term all the time, but would you then say that self-love is simply that process of knowing that you're a 10 out of 10, sort of the becoming Darren?
Well, yes and no, but I try to stay away, even though I use things like self-love 10 out of 10. It's actually dangerous to put labels on these concepts because to truly get there, you really, really, really need to go to a very high level of self-awareness. And these words like self-love, 10 out of 10, they're sort of inexact. They're vague. They're like the universe. And if you know what the universe is, then you can talk about the universe. But be careful of the catchphrases, because I go to people all the time, or people come to me as clients, and they'll say, well, I do love myself. I have lots of self-love. But then they'll describe their life, and I'll be like, no, you don't. Like, no, you don't. And it's just they have a blind spot and a misunderstanding of what self-love is, because it's more intricate. It's sort of like being a gardener and wanting a garden, and you want the flowers to bloom really beautifully. Well, you could say, well, the key to a garden is good gardening. Okay. But that's a little bit overly simplistic, because then anyone could say, well, I am a good gardener. And it robs you of an opportunity to really understand what that is. So I take away the catchphrases, but I will say this. Anything you want in love is possible. And I'm not saying that to be floaty or flowery. I'm saying your version of what love is, that deep love that you're yearning for, that's put in you by God to motivate you. God doesn't just put it in there to mess with you. It's put in there to say, hey, this is possible. It's in your deep knowing goes, I want this. I want this. Then it's a question of doing the work, the journey, the exploration to awaken your consciousness to get that. So I don't call it self-love. I would call it care. I would call it repair, because our default state is to be loving. Our default state is to give and receive love. That's what a kid is. A kid is like on the playground at 5 years old. Kids are super open. Mm-hmm. A kid will walk up to you and say, hi, I just made a new best friend. And you're like, wow, that was 4 minutes. How did that happen? And it's because kids are open and they're present. And all the things that adults read books for and read and watch videos, kids just naturally are. Adults get drunk to just act like a kid. Kids don't read, how to win friends and influence people. Kids just do influence people. So that's our default state. Self-love is undoing the damage that we did in our consciousness to really just return back to our default state.
Is there, especially in like the age of Instagram that we're in now, is there a very fine line or an easy misunderstanding between self-love and self-indulgence or narcissism?
Well, it's a really good question, because again, these concepts are subtle and they have layers, and people misuse them all the time because they're complex. And even just saying love, oh, I love them. Just the word love is horribly misused these days. I mean, often what people call love is codependency and addiction. So when I work with people, we're basically updating your love software to get to a more natural, healthy state. And that assumes then that most of the problems, in my opinion, it's a software issue. Our love software is riddled with bugs. And it's the bugs in our love software that's creating all the suffering and all the problems. So yeah, people have misunderstandings. And I see people all the time, and it kind of, it bugs me a little, but it saddens me, because you'll see expressions of like, I love myself. I'm amazing. I'm a goddess. And it's like, oh, God, okay, if you really loved who you were on a deep cellular level, you wouldn't be telling people how you're a goddess. You wouldn't need to. You'd be so fulfilled, you wouldn't have to tell the world how great you are. Like the Dalai Lama doesn't walk in the room and be like, hey, y'all, Dalai Lama in the house.
What?
He doesn't. Yeah, hey, y'all, reincarnation of the Buddha is on my yoga pants. And so especially with North American women, that I'm a little bit of an expert on because it's who I help, there's this, you're amazing, you're phenomenal, you deserve it all. And it's very egoic, and it's very easy to buy into, and it's not humble, and it's not self-loving. So it just adds a whole other layer of confusion. And so it's good on some level that people are saying, I'm great, I'm wonderful. The intent is good. It's way better than saying you're a piece of crap. However, a lot of people, especially North American women and many women all over the world and men, have a confusion, and that confusion robs of an opportunity to truly address the issue. So the first thing I do when I work with clients is I say, okay, I'm glad that you think you're amazing, but let's be a little bit more honest. And again, let's go to the truth, and let's find where your love software is off so we can use that current love that you have for yourself and tweak it so that it's truly in reality and you truly get what you want. Because right now you get a lot of people saying, I'm amazing, I'm incredible, I'm all the single ladies. And you're like, okay, where's your love? And they're like, I'll get back to you. It's like, so it's great that people are feeling great about themselves, but I want to give them a healthy consciousness so that they actually are rewarded with the external love. Mm-hmm. Because nothing's better than calling yourself a queen, but being alone. We want someone to share our lives with, and that's what I help people with.
You mentioned there that love is, what people often call love is actually addiction and dependency. I'm interested to find out, what is your definition of love? How do we know we really love someone?
You don't.
And thanks for joining me. Okay.
And good night. Again, this is like, really think about it. Again, kids, and I'm kind of messing with you, but I'm trying to get us to go deeper. Again, kids don't sit around and go, how do you know when you really want to play tag with someone? How do you know? You shouldn't care. You shouldn't care. The reason we ask these questions, what is love? How do we know? What does it look like? Is there's fear underneath. And so we're trying to mask the fear with like knowing. If I know, I'll be safe. But what I want to do is work with people so that we've removed their fear so they don't need to feel safe. They naturally are safe. They naturally fear open and alive, and they're not trying to control things with knowing. So when love is going well, just like when your best friend and that friendship is going well, you shouldn't be asking questions. You're just feeling good, and then you have somebody across from you, and they help you feel better. It's like playing music. Love to me, I mean, if there was a definition, it's just a connection. That's all it is. There is no such thing as love, to be perfectly blunt. It's a word that gets used a lot, and it helps us understand things, but we just use it when we want to use it. There is no solid definition. So it's like what people say, well, what's wind? Well, what is wind? Well, wind is when there's wind on your face. No, but what is wind? And there's no actual definition of wind. Technically, it's when air is moving. Yeah. It's the experience that you feel when moving air hits your face. But there is no such thing as wind. You can't hand someone wind. You can't buy wind. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a concept that we put a label on to help us understand it, which is fine. But it also limits us because it's like we're looking for the thing. And really, when love, whatever that is just working, you shouldn't be thinking about it. You should be so present and so in it, you're just enjoying it. Like when you're eating an ice cream cone and it's just amazing. You don't turn to your friend and say, how do you know this ice cream's good? You don't ask those questions. You're just enjoying the ice cream. And if you're freaked out about is it the perfect ice cream cone, you should probably go deeper and look at your ice cream fears. So that's my answer. Is when it's working, you shouldn't be asking questions. When I work with people, obviously people come to me and they're constant overthinkers, and I want to get people to a place where they're not overthinking. They're present, and there's this concept which I call they're living in flirt. And flirt stands for free love in real time, which just means you're giving love, receiving love, and you're present. Now, to get to that state, you got to do some serious work, and that's what I help people with. But I'm trying to get them to that state where no one's sitting around asking questions anymore because they're just enjoying it.
Yeah, I'd love to get into, and I love what you said about like when you're experiencing love, you don't need to ask questions and sort of ponder if you're there. And it probably is the same for happiness and fulfillment and that sort of thing as well. You don't have to ask that, you're just experiencing it. So I'd love to get into some of that sort of deeper work and where people get started on that process.
Well, I offer a 9-week course called Next Level Love, where I begin to train you like an athlete in these tools and a system so that love really isn't a word you're chasing. It's more like a lifestyle that you become to live. You become what I call a love athlete, which is that you want to experience these high levels of love, but you do it the way an athlete does. You sort of prepare yourself and you train yourself and you practice and you master yourself. And when you are strong and flexible, that's when you're able to dance and be free like an amazing ballerina. So that's a short answer. But
yeah, Maria told me about the concept of a love athlete. So I'd love to, I mean, you touched on what a love athlete is now, but how does a love athlete train then?
Well, there's a couple. Oh, the first thing is that not everyone is a love athlete. That's what I learned. A love athlete to me is what I call people that they can't settle. You know, they're allergic to average and they don't want to have mediocre love. They really want to fulfill their heart's desire. And so it's a mindset and an attitude of how you approach love. Most people approach love with a crappy attitude because we're all full of confusions. And if you took your love attitude into the workplace, you'd be fired in a week. So being a love athlete is you say, no. Whatever I want is possible, but it's going to show up as an effect of who I am. And I'm going to train myself and prepare myself to proactively go after what I want. And not everybody wants to do that because it takes courage and it takes devotion and it takes focus. And a lot of people have all these romantic notions of love, and they don't realize that it's really set up by God to be a video game for you to get your act together. So the first thing about being a love athlete is you just are one. There's a calling. It's like a Jedi. You're like, I like this guy. I want to go after big love. Now, the second part is the training. And the training is that we let go of the goal and we look at the practice. We train you. There's a practice. There's a discipline of preparing your consciousness to be strong and flexible. And your next question would be, what does that look like? I mean, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of layers. But the first part is we are working on becoming fearless. We get at the fear. And the reason for that is that for every ounce of fear in your system, you miss out on love. It's just math. And so most people sit around trying to address love, I need to know their love language, or I need to work on my relationship skills, or maybe we need date night. And that's all great. But at the very foundation, if you're afraid, you're closed off. And love is a connection. And so you can't access higher levels of love. If you're afraid, you can't be authentic. If you're afraid, you can't be open. If you're afraid, you can't be patient. If you're afraid, you can't surrender. So fear is like the sandbags on a hot air balloon. It just weighs the whole hot air balloon down. And that's just physics. So most people want to improve their hot air balloon. And they're like, well, let's change the color on their hot air balloon. Or let's change the basket and make it a pound. Or let's change the fuel in the hot air maker. It's like, wait a minute. Hold on. Before you go tweaking that stuff, you've got sandbags that are holding the whole thing down. Let's get rid of the sandbags. And then the natural physics of the universe will allow the hot air balloon to just rise, and then you can relax and enjoy the view. So love athletes clear out the noise, and we make it simple, and we go at the fear and then allow love to show up as an effect of going at the fear.
Yeah, and that's a perfect opportunity to speak about next level love and the work that you've got going on. So what is it that people will experience and go through when they join that program?
Well, the first part of the program is that we simplify love. We clear out all the distractions, and we say, okay, we're going to work on you working towards being fearless and being comfortable in your own skin. That's our only value system right now. Feeling comfortable in your own skin, liking yourself, liking who you are, and then being naturally more open and authentic. And from that place of openness and authenticity, you will attract the love that you're looking for at the level you're looking for. So that's our mantra. Let go of the goal and let's work on the core. You. The way we do this is we look at the fear and we say, well, what are people afraid of? And the answer is that we're afraid of rejection. And everybody knows this. We're afraid to get hurt, and we're afraid of rejection. That's what creates the fear. And then as a love athlete, we begin to pull back the layers and we say, okay, well, what is rejection? What is it? And basically rejection is not what happens to you. It's the meaning you put on it. Mm-hmm. Rejection isn't because someone left you. It's because they left you and you put a meaning on that. And it's the meaning that hurts. It's the meaning that is painful, because really just the person left. That's it. So if you're sad, a little bit angry, that's normal. But if you're anything like I was when I was 20, the first time someone left me, I was out for 2 years. 2 years of my life gone because somebody walked out the door. And so it's not the person leaving, it's that we put a meaning on it that puts us lights out. And that meaning is the belief that we're not enough to be loved. That is the belief that's ruining our whole lives. That's the meaning that children don't have, which allow them to be so open and present. And it's the meaning that humans do have that makes us so scared all the time. Not enough to be loved. It's a horrible, scary, toxic thought that's ruining everything. So love athletes just go at that. They say, okay, I'm going to get rid of this belief. And it's important to the love athlete training because most people are trying to address their lack of self-love by improving themselves. They'll say things like, I want to feel more love, more self-love. I want to feel more confident. I want to like my body more. It's all about this idea of adding things. But as a scientist, I realized there's nothing to add. You don't add self-love. Our default state is self-love. In reality, the reason we don't love ourselves is because there's this belief that we think we're not enough to be loved. But not enough to be loved it's a lie. It's an old story that we made up as a kid. It's a lie. It's not true. And so the way you get rid of it is to dismantle the lie, not to try and become more enough. You dismantle the lie that says you're not enough. And it's way easier to dismantle a lie than it is to build something. It's like you have $1 million in your bank account, and then you lied to yourself and told yourself that you're broke. Now you want to go get a house, and you're like, I got to go earn $1 million to build a house. No, you don't have to go earn anything. You just have to undo the lie that says you're broke. You actually have $1 million love dollars in you. You just forgot. So we dismantle the lie of not enoughness. And it doesn't take that long. When it evaporates, the truth that you already are enough bubbles to the surface. When that bubbles to the surface, you're not afraid to get rejected anymore. You're not afraid to get hurt anymore. And when you're not afraid to get hurt and rejected, you naturally open up. You're naturally authentic. You're naturally fearless. And all the love in the universe shows up at your doorstep. Does that sound sexy?
Yeah, I love that. Daniel, I do want to be mindful of the time. I've got some sort of rapid fire questions at the end here. But before we get to those, is there anything else you think would be valuable for people listening that we haven't covered?
Yeah. I would like to, the reason I do this work is because of the pain that I went through. I just lived a life of hating who I was, struggling, suffering, longing, thinking I needed to be different. And when I saw this process, that it's about being a 10 out of 10, and that wasn't just a catchphrase. It was actually something you could cultivate in yourself like an athlete. You could really train in it. It just changed it brought hope, because I saw, oh, wait, I see why I'm not getting love. And now I know what to do. And the second I saw it, it brought hope. And I want to let people out there know that I know you're losing hope, and I know you're getting jaded, and I know you're getting resentful. And of course you are, because it's not working. And I want to let you know that you don't have to live in that space. And what's so bad about that space is when you're not getting the love you want, human beings have a natural tendency to blame themselves. I blamed my pimples, why I wasn't getting love. And everyone's out there blaming themselves, saying, this is why I'm not getting love. I'm too fat. I'm too this. I'm too skinny. My butt, my legs, my hairline, my money, my face. People are looking to explain their lack of love on something because their deep knowing knows the love is out there. So they go looking to find a thing, and they blame themselves. But in reality, the love isn't there, not because there's anything wrong with you. You just have a software issue that's put in you by God to confuse you so you can reclaim your rightful place, which is that you are enough to be loved. So it's a software issue, not anything. So I want to tell everyone out there right now that's looking for love and not finding it, it's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's not your weight. It's not your beauty. It's not your age. It's not the city. It's not anything. You are already fine. You just have a software issue that we can work on. And I invite you to this work because it is so beautiful to stop hating yourself and start loving yourself. It just feels amazing, regardless of the person you get to cuddle with. The cuddling is a bonus, but to just walk through life feeling comfortable in your own skin, looking in the mirror and like what you see, it is sacred. Sacred, sacred. And as someone who lives in that space now, it's my purpose to help you get there. So if you're frustrated, for you and for me, really begin to love who you are. You deserve it. If I can help you, I'd be honored. But no matter what, just please, please, please go love yourself, because it's the way God intended.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So these sort of rapid fire questions at the end here, just the first thing that comes to mind and just a sentence on each one. The first question is, what do you wish you'd been told in your 20s?
You're enough.
I love it. What is the greatest opportunity for quarter lifers today?
We're living in an awakened time where a lot of the hard work of life is taken by technology. So there's consciousness is awakening, and the internet is allowing new, bold, fresh, enlightened ideas. So you're living in a beautiful time where consciousness is important, and savor that and appreciate that and follow that.
Daniel, I have one more question before I get to that. If people are listening to this and they want to find out more about you and Next Level Love and everything else that you've got going on, where's the best place for them to go and get in touch with you?
they can go to nextlevel.love. And from that, they can sign up for the webinar that I do. It's a free live webinar where they learn more about this work, how it will help their lives get what they want faster, how it reveals blind spots. And I'll be offering, I offer them on a regular basis, but we are launching Next Level Love, a new class on December 9th. And these classes are with me. It's not recordings. I'm working with you to give you those breakthroughs and those blind spots and to reveal the blind spots. So December 9th, we're launching and we're doing webinars leading up to that. All of that is at nextlevel.love.
Yeah, and I'll hook that up to the show notes so everyone can easily go and find that. Daniel, before I get to the final question, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you for coming on the show today and sharing a bit about your story of how you sort of found your inner Darren and became a 10 out of 10. Well, realized you were always a 10 out of 10. And now helping people do the same thing. I think it's beautiful work that you're doing and so needed as well. And the final question that I have is, what one thing can listeners do this week to start creating their own quarter life comeback?
Courage. That's it. The tools and the system that I have for people allows you to wake up and integrate faster. But in reality, the experiences that will allow your software to update are just on the other side of your comfort zone. You don't have to learn anything. You don't have to actually do anything. You have to put yourself in situations where your software can naturally update. I help you with that. But even if I wasn't around, if you just look in your life and go, where am I afraid? Where won't I go? If you just go over there a little bit each day, you will naturally update your software. That the reason we stay stuck is we refuse to be uncomfortable. And if you just stay open and courageous and set that intention, God and the universe will take care of the fine tuning. You don't need to know anything. You just have to show up with courage a little bit each day and let God take care of the rest.
Daniel Packard, thank you so much for coming on the Quarter Life Comeback.
Thank you so much for having me. You're enough too, Brian. Don't forget.
So there you have it, guys and girls. That wraps up this week's episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 40. And a big thanks once again to Daniel Packard for coming on the show and sharing his unique wisdom and expertise on love. If you like this one and you know someone who could benefit from it, share it around on social media and shoot me a tweet at Brian Tier to let me know some of your biggest takeaways. For me, it was the fact that we don't need to add more love into our lives. Rather, we just need to get rid of those limiting beliefs and that fear to reveal the love that is already there. Now, as always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in this episode at briantier.com/040. And until next week, keep creating your quarter life comeback.
Thanks for listening to the Quarter Life Comeback. Get started today by visiting briantier.com.